All right. Well, Philip O'Hanlon, am I saying that right?
Correct.
All right, welcome to the Studio Corner podcast.
Thank you very much.
It is
Thank you very much.
so exciting to have you on here. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
The more I've been in contact with your people, if I will,
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of articles, a lot of documents to look at regarding who you are, the up close look, and I am genuinely a fan.
Yeah.
So
Thank you very much.
I am talking to you as very much a fan today.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the beautiful world of high-end audio,
Yeah.
I am very curious, a man of your listening stature, what are you
Right.
listening to right now?
What am I listening? Actually, what I've been listening to yesterday was a George Benson album called "The Other Side of Abbey Road."
Wow.
And so the unique story about this is Creed Taylor, back in 1970, 3 weeks after the release of the Beatles' Abbey Road, brought George Benson into the studio along with people like Hubert Laws and a wonderful cast of really nice jazz musicians. And they decided to record the second side of Abbey Road as a jazz album.
Wow.
Right? And George Benson actually sings on this more like kind of as an interlude from time to time. And then they have some string instruments, like a small chamber trio or quartet on this. And then they have a lot of flute, obviously, with Hubert Laws. And then they have, a lot of the jazz of what you would expect of how they've rearranged and reimagined the Beatles album. And it's a very, very interesting counterpoint to the Beatles' Abbey Road. And I'm surprised more people haven't heard this, actually.
I haven't heard it.
Yeah.
When you say, I'm amazed. So it's basically like The Other Side.
Correct.
It's called The Other Side.
Yeah.
But just the jazzy, more musician-directed vibe
Correct.
to it.
Correct. So the songs are much longer. So this is the LP. So whereas the Beatles played, say, approximately 20 minutes of Abbey Road on side 2, these guys play over 30 minutes of it, and it's basically just stretched over both sides of the record. And CTI at the time made decent sounding recordings, but the fresh perspective that George Benson and his jazz friends brought to the music, for anybody who loves Abbey Road, they're going to flip when they hear this, because it really is. It's not, it's not a carbon copy, which, whenever I hear artists performing some very famous song that we all know very well, and especially when they cover the Beatles, unless you do it really differently, you're going to turn around and somebody's going to go, "Oh, I much prefer John Lennon or Paul McCartney or George Harrison singing that."
It's interesting how that works. When you go to cover a song that's already written, but yet as listeners, we're still looking for the special side of it. The song's already there.
Correct.
But if it's not special enough from what's already existing, then we lose sight of it,
Yeah, and then the other aspect to it is our emotional attachment. So our emotional attachment is really usually to the original, and consequently, when you get a cover version, you kind of listen to it and you go, it's good. It's not amazing, and I still prefer the original.
You know what a perfect example of a great cover artist is? Hendrix with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And I always use that as like kind of the norm for what a cover should be. Like, make it so yours that it becomes almost, people recognize All Along the Watchtower as a Hendrix song, Hey Joe as a Hendrix song. You're not going to run into younger crowds like me that are going to say, hey, that's a Bob Dylan song,
Yeah.
It's and it really make it your own. So
Agreed. I mean, to your point, there are other examples, such as Jeff Buckley's cover version of Hallelujah.
My heart is melting.
I mean, he just absolutely slaughters it. I mean, he really does, to the point where you'd actually listen to the Leonard Cohen version and you go, yeah, that's very good. But the Jeff Buckley one is the one where he really stripped the song down to its essence, and you go, oh my God.
he really, I mean, it tugs at every string in your soul.
Yes.
It
Yes.
was.
Yes.
I can tell you the exact place I was when I first heard that. I went to a Christian high school and I was in Bible class, and a friend of mine was making an argument about music, and he put on that video of Jeff Buckley performing that. It was the first time I experienced that. I was never the same.
Yeah.
That's covering a song.
Yeah.
Beautiful
I went to see the Leonard Cohen tribute concert in Montreal I'm going to say in November 2017, and KD Lang covered it, and it was, don't get me wrong, really, really, really good. But it was unfortunate that Jeff Buckley had died. You know, obviously he died in a boating accident quite a long time ago now, actually.
How old was he when he?
He was about 25, 26.
Yeah, young guy.
Like really young, yeah. I mean, he'd put out one album.
Can you imagine what he would have done?
Oh yeah. Obviously,
that's the
capable.
hardest thing to let go of. You know,
Yeah.
what could they have done?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's move on to where do you want to start?
So I want to start from the very beginning, because when I was doing the research, you know, I'm a musician. I've been in studios. I know as much as I do about high-end audio, which apparently was nothing.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to get that cleared up right away, because a lot of us younger generation, we listen to these tiny little headphones.
Sure.
The idea of high-end audio is kind of, not exposed to us.
Of course.
And so if I had never heard a good sound system at all in my life, and I came up to you and I said, Philip, what is high-end audio? What would you tell me?
High-end audio is basically, first and foremost, the greater appreciation of music. So for a lot of your listeners, I can only assume that many of them have never heard a properly sorted out system. And truthfully, many of these people are going to be great music lovers. And what I'm hoping to do today is basically pique their interest, and I'm going to tell them, do you know what you're missing out on? So first off, let me just say, there are two different events. If Jeff Buckley were playing for us tonight, that would be the live performance, and that would be one entity in itself. Now, as soon as we go to record it, it becomes a different entity. And I'm going to focus on the recording as opposed to the live event, just because we're talking about something that we can share with many people, and we can share it multiple times. The live event is wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it's not something that's repeatable, and it's not something that you can share easily. So going back to the recording, what people are used to is a photocopy of that, for example, live event. And what we're offering is a full color, 4-color photograph with much better color saturation, with a lot more detail, where you look into this big photograph and you go, wow, I feel like I'm almost there. Whereas most of the same information is available on the color photocopy, but it doesn't absorb you as much.
Absolutely.
The next thing is, most of your listeners have probably never heard the soundstage. So the soundstage is this panorama before you as the listener, and you can basically identify that the drum kit is in the center, the singer is way out front, and then you might have some saxophones, you definitely have guitars, you've got a piano, and they're off to different sides on the soundstage. So you have all of these people laid out in front of you in a three-dimensional form. Close your eyes and you absolutely believe that it doesn't matter, if it's Bjork, if it's, the Emerson String Quartet. You close your eyes and you are transported and you are carried away by the music, and you absolutely feel that living, breathing musicians are right before your ears, and they are playing specifically tonight for you.
Can I just take you with me everywhere I go and
Yeah.
have you describe this to everyone?
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's a bold statement. I think it's a very bold statement. It's a very important statement because the amount of work that goes into what you're talking about is very unknown. You know, first off, start from the beginning. The song has to be good enough to record, but then where you place the microphones, what are you recording through, who's mixing it, who's mastering it, and you get so far, and that has to be flawless. And then we want to give it to the public, and you're providing a service that says, hey, all that work that these producers and engineers and musicians put into this beautiful piece of art, we can expose that.
Correct. And the, you know, it's sad because there are many people out there who absolutely adore this music, and they're absolutely rabid music lovers, and yet they sell themselves short. So the same people, if you went to their home and they said, oh, hey, would you like a glass of wine? They're not going to serve you a bottle, no offense, right, Trader Joe's, but they're not going to serve you a bottle of TJ's $2 chuck or $3 now, right, for the Charles Shaw, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to serve you that. They'll serve you something a lot better. And it's the same thing when you go to somebody's house and they go, oh, you have to hear my new album, and let me play a few songs for you from my new album. If they play it for you like on some kind of boombox or even, heaven forbid, some Sonos speakers or something like this, you're not going to hear what all those mastering engineers slaved over, what the detail that the mixing engineer was trying to share.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking, saying, why would you sell yourself short? Why would you not show this in its greatest form?
Well, it's pretty unbelievable to me because there's so many songs that have touched my life that it wasn't necessarily the full song in total. Maybe it was just a subtle sound, something that strung the right chord with me, you know?
Yeah.
And you can't get those little nuances, those little parts of the recording. You can't capture that through these tiny little headphones or bad speakers. You know, that's why they call it the car test. You know, cars have become somewhat of the closest we can get as, you know, just drive around and listen to a song, and all of a sudden maybe a bass line that you didn't hear before, maybe a slight little sound they threw in, and that's what hooks you. That's what grabs you.
Yeah.
And that is such an important experience for the, I mean, as a human body to vibe with that, it's so important. And I feel like we miss out on a lot of that. You know, when I try to tell people this is why I love the song and they're just not vibing with it, I play them through my studio speakers. They're like, oh, I get it.
Sure.
And not that they have to be able to explain that, but it is. I've witnessed the different experience.
Yeah. Now, so besides, so we talked kind of, I was just saying on a, you know, technically, I just said to recap, I said, you know, you get a lot more resolution, you get this micro detail through this better system. You also get this soundstage because the dealers would set these up when the people buy this. And obviously, like I was saying, you get this living performance in front of you in 3D, in the 3D. There's another aspect that the people appreciate, but they don't always get. And that is because the sound is not enveloping enough. And that is the whole emotional experience that comes along with the music. So the emotional experience can come from the actual music itself, or it can come from the performance. And it can also come where the people come, they sit down, they bring their own emotional baggage, and you play this song, such as, for example, one of these songs from Abbey Road, like Something and things like this, and they heard this when they were in college. And it immediately triggers these emotions that they felt 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and suddenly they're reliving how they felt, 20, 30, 40 years ago, when they were with somebody else in a bar or wherever, they were with the love of their life or whatever like this, and they get this whole rush of like time travel, and they're going, oh my God, I forgot what that was.
It's cleansing.
It is.
It's cleansing.
It is.
It truly is.
It is.
I've said this 100 times on my show. I've said this 100 times to people, probably 1,000 times to people. Music is a physical vibration. You know, it's a sound wave, and our bodies experience it before our mind does, even.
Yes.
And that's why, in my opinion, the idea of, you know, high-end audio, the idea of the best quality sound of what these people were trying to portray, it physically heals the body. Like the idea of maybe stress or mental illness, so many things can be in my opinion, will start to be healed if we're able to put ourselves into a place of like, you know, I get to listen to studio speakers every day. How blessed am I?
Yeah.
But people don't get that. They get headphones, you know, which aren't bad. You know, it's on the go. Take music with you. But the healing, the cleansing experience, what you're talking about, I feel like is appreciated, but it's so rare to get your hands on these days.
Yeah.
And I think if my generation, the younger generation, had more accessibility to listen to music this way, I think it would change everything.
Well, you know, that's where this party on Saturday, the moremusic.today party, is where literally we're expecting thousands of people from San Diego to Montreal to visit different stores, you know, anywhere from Minneapolis to Miami to New York to Manhattan. And, you know, we've got it up on the site of where they can hear this. And it'll be a lot of fun for people to step into one of these stores that they've never considered going into before and checking out what the party is all about, because they will be met by a lot of other people who are also music lovers.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this event? I really want everyone to know what this is, what's going on, and how they can get involved with this, because I swear it was meant to be. I've been having these feelings. I've been thinking about a new sound system. You know, I want better. And all of a sudden we get in contact and you're putting on like my dream event.
Absolutely.
So please tell me about this.
Yeah, you know, so basically, I mean, we come at this from the desire to share our enthusiasm for music and to share our love of music. And the problem with high-end audio is that to many people, they're put off by the fact that, one, it might be quite expensive, and two, they don't know anything about it and they don't know where to start, and then so they just go, forget it. You know, what I have is good enough. And really, you know, do you live your life and you go, good enough is enough? Especially if you tell me that it's something that's really important to you and it's something that resonates with your soul, then good enough is not good enough, let me point out. So for me, I've been buying records for 40, going on 50 years now at this stage. And Abbey Road came out in 1969, and we would have played a copy of this at home on an old vacuum tube monogram. So it had like the single speaker, and it was like this rectangular box on 4 legs. And you lift up the lid and you basically put the record in, and then it even had the ability to play singles, and you could stack like say 6 singles in there and it would play the 6 singles one after the other, right?
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Beatles was terrific because this came out, and then, you know, initially we thought it was their swan song, and then the last album that came out was Let It Be, but Let It Be was actually recorded before Abbey Road. Anyway, it was only actually last week that I saw that there was an interview tape that came up about Abbey Road, and it was apparently Ringo had some ailment and he was in hospital at the time, and so John, Paul and George went to a business meeting and they recorded this interview because Ringo was in hospital. And it was interesting that in this they started talking about how the next album would be recorded, and they were saying they were going to change it out, and so they were going to say that John and Paul and George would each write the same number of songs, and Ringo would get 2 songs to write. And it was interesting, they were breaking up the Lennon and McCartney partnership and saying that the songs henceforth would be credited to either John Lennon or Paul McCartney. And to me, by the way, I think that was a slight mistake, because one of the marvelous things about their music, and you can hear it quite clearly, where maybe John starts with a song. I mean, he initially writes the song, and then Paul comes along, and Paul adds the sweetness to it. And he adds the sweetness to it that makes it, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like that classic. And similarly, Paul starts with a song, and it's way too sweet and way too saccharine for John Lennon's taste, and he roughs it up, and he gives it a bit of edge.
Yeah, that deep Lennon feel.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that was absolutely wonderful, and interestingly enough, the songs, for example, from even Ringo on Abbey Road are great, and George Harrison's contributions, like Something and all the rest, are obviously absolutely jaw-droppingly good.
Something is actually like top 3 maybe favorite Beatles song for me.
Yeah.
Growing up, that was one of those songs.
Yeah.
One of those songs. So,
Yeah. And, for me, what I liked, by the way, I mean, it's so funny that, the critics are all very quick to pan, for example, side 1 of Abbey Road. But for me, I loved it because I loved this kind of whimsical fantasy world that they introduced. And so it was like all these absurd songs, like Maxwell's Silver Hammer and The Octopus's Garden. I mean, it's Polythene Pam. She came in through the bathroom window.
Yeah.
And I loved all of these kind of absurd songs that they had broken away from, she loves me, yeah. She loves me, yeah. Please, how often, as much and all as we all like some romance and all the rest, I can't listen to album after album after album of people just saying, I love you. Please.
The Beatles must be much more talented than that, too.
Yeah, there must be more messages, right,
yeah,
than that. So that's wonderful. And so going back to the event next Saturday, here is an opportunity for music lovers to step in to basically a whole new world and explore this new world through the lens of their favorite music.
So how do we find it?
You go to More Music, spelt MOR music.today, and there is actually a map there, and you can basically see, Chicago comes up, you've got Dallas, Texas, and you've got all these basic cities all across North America. So this is not just the US. We have one dealer in Vancouver, we've got 2 in Montreal, and 2 in Toronto playing this.
This is incredible. I'm so excited. I truly hope that this is way beyond anything any of us can expect.
Yeah.
Because I think if this catches on, music festivals, right? Everyone wants to go to music festivals, but there's so much in between you and the music at a festival.
Yes.
To open up what you're talking about, this experience to sit down and listen to music at this level is so important. And I think it's maybe one of the most important things that someone has done in a lot of years.
Yeah.
I hope this catches on.
So do we. It's the MORE, by the way, stands for Magnum Opus Rediscovered. And so what we're doing is we're taking what I would describe to you very simply as a modern musical masterpiece and making it available to everyone. And we want people to really go back in there and enjoy this.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes, it's unfortunate. Some of the labels aren't very cooperative with this. So, we would love, by the way, the feedback from your listeners as to what albums we should do next.
Oh, you'll get a long list. I mean, if you're providing us a room to listen to music at the highest level just before a live,
Correct.
and you're looking for suggestions, boy, will you get some.
Yeah. No. We encourage it, right? And the reality in today's day and age is that for the music companies, the EU, the European copyright law, is now as such that if the label does nothing to the music, that after 50 years the copyright expires and the music becomes public domain.
Okay.
So in the case of Abbey Road, for example, EMI have obviously remixed, remastered this, and they want this to be the de facto version that people will buy now going forward. And of course the copyright now kicks in and starts up all over again.
Hopefully.
Right? Yes. So from their point of view, this is a good investment in the crown jewels of over at EMI.
Well, I mean, very good investment, but with good intention, good things to come with it. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
And that excites me. The fact that these big companies are saying, "Hey, we want to keep, whether you want to call it control, copyright, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
We want to keep this, close by, so no one messes with this, right?
Correct.
But in the process, we're allowing basically a whole other generation to go through this incredible release.
Yes.
And on top of it all, I think a lot of music listeners, not outside of the music industry, out of creating music, like we talked about before, miss out on the little subtleties. And Abbey Road, I mean, the Beatles, talk about nuances, subtlety in recording, everything with intention. And an album like Abbey Road, to experience it, I think it's important. Even if you've never listened to the Beatles, even if you've never listened to anything before the year 2010, go listen to this. You don't necessarily have to like the music, because everyone has their opinions, but as an education, to know what's possible.
Yes.
To know how important it is.
Yes. And what'll happen, what people can expect is that our dealers will be playing what the original record sounds like, and they'll be comparing it to Giles Martin's remastered version of this. And I'll give you an example. So back in 1969, when this was recorded, the technology at the time, they had analog 8-track tape machines. And when, for example, the recording engineer, who's yet a different person again, would go to, for example, record just the drum kit, he may well use 5 microphones. So 5 microphones straight away, that's 5 tracks on a tape machine. Remember now, we have 8 to start with. And then you've got bass guitar, you've got rhythm guitar, you've got lead guitar, you've got piano. Then you need to mic up all 4 band members for singing. Right? So, I mean, you do the math and you can see very quickly, we've run way past 8 tracks straight away. So what they did was they recorded this. They would record each instrument individually. And then what they have to do is they have to bounce the tracks onto yet another tape machine. So they might take, in other words, 2 of these 8-track tape machines and then lay the tracks down onto yet another tape machine. And then they have to do this, actually. They end up having to do it 3 or 4 times. Unfortunately, with tape, you do get a generation loss each time. And what Giles Martin has done is gone back to the very original tapes of where the music was captured at the very first time.
Wow.
And digitize that. And then go back and remix everything and recreate what his father managed to get. And the nice thing about this is you're going to hear things like the drum kit will have a lot more attack than you've heard before.
Oh my goodness.
And then also the guitars are going to, for example, John Lennon goes for a rawer sound on his guitar than Paul, and you'll hear that. Wow. But Giles Martin has been very subtle about this remix, remaster. So it's not like you listen to this and you go, oh, it doesn't sound like the Beatles anymore at all. I mean, that's not the object of the exercise. The object of the exercise, if you were to think about it, would be you go into a cathedral and there's been a fresco up on the wall there for the last 400 years, and you ask these restoration people to clean it, and what they do is they clean it and they take away just the patina that came over the painting over the years, very, very slowly. So it may have generated over 200-300 years.
Yeah.
And what they do is they very carefully remove just the dirt. And what they want to do is show you the vibrant colors that were actually hiding in the cathedral all these years underneath that dirt. So similarly, all Giles Martin is doing is cleaning up the sound and allowing you to get an even more emotional experience from this. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, there's also alternate takes and demo cuts on this. The demo cuts are kind of interesting to a certain extent. I mean, it's not like the demo cuts you're going to want to listen to over and over again, truthfully.
Yeah.
Some of the alternate cuts, yes. So, for example...
This is not stuff anybody's heard, though?
No, they haven't heard it before.
Okay, all right.
Right? They haven't heard it before. So, there's an alternate take on I Want You, She's So Heavy. And
Oh my
on
goodness.
the version that made it to the album is actually a couple of different takes that were composited together. And on the alternate version of this, what you hear is a lot of Billy Preston playing organ. And I don't know what the decision was behind this. On the version that we've all heard on Abbey Road, there's Billy Preston playing his organ, and somehow they decided to kind of mask a lot of that organ playing by putting white noise over it. I mean, why they did this, I have no idea. But anyway, on the alternate cut of this, the alternate version of it, you hear a Billy organ playing, and you even get to hear his solo. And obviously, the music sounds, the same song just sounds so much more immediate. And you go, oh my God, it sounds so much fresher now. And you're going, I am transported back to 1969. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's where, especially for people who love this album, go into your local dealer's store and say to them, hey, I want to hear the alternate track that Philip is talking about of I Want You, She's So Heavy, and compare it to the original.
Oh,
and
man.
they'll walk out of there like grinning from ear to ear. And they'll be
Oh.
going, yeah, I mean, this is so much fun.
This is like a dream come true for me.
Yeah.
This is like the ultimate nerding out for me, as I call it.
Yeah.
But he got access to the original tracking, basically.
Correct.
Before they bounce it onto another 8-track.
Correct.
That,
Correct.
I don't even know if I could handle those nerves to
Yeah,
be the
yeah.
one to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible. So basically, he was able to take what the Beatles did, the rawest form of what the Beatles did, and mix it with our modern technology to basically, I mean, I love the analogy of the fresco on the wall. That's
Yeah.
perfectly put. I truly think this is going to change everything. If
Yes.
people, because how many times have you heard in the industry, I have trained ear, I have studio ears, where we spent hours and days and years in front of speakers trying to listen to every nuance and pick it up, so we're trained. But to
Correct.
have someone without trained ears to come in and just be exposed, purely exposed to what went on, this is going to change the human coding.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is incredible.
No. Listen, I mean, I think for those music lovers there, this is a new experience that they've never, ever, that most of them have never thought about and never given it a second thought.
Absolutely.
And it's something that will really resonate with them, because they're just going to go, oh my God, I have been like, why did I wait so long for this?
Wow.
And it's interesting because you can buy crap from the major box movers, and you can spend X amount of money and you can get crap, or you can go to these specialist dealers, spend the same amount of money, maybe spend a little bit more, and get something that you go like, oh my God.
So I think something that's being lost in this process is that you can buy the best, right?
Yeah.
Buy the best audio, but placement from what you're talking about
Is crucial.
Yeah. Can you talk to me more a little bit about that? Say, just because like, yes, studios can set up and have guys come in and set it up, but like, say someone has just bought a new house and they want to dedicate a room to listening music, right?
Yeah.
What are the things that they need to know about where these everything's being placed?
Yeah, basically, the speakers perform according to the law of physics. So the speakers, in other words, need to be pulled out from the wall, they need to be brought into the room, and then you basically have to figure out where the hell you're going to actually sit. And so, for example, if you've got enough space, I would recommend a 3-person sofa. And that gives, for me, my advice to all the great music lovers is music has to be shared to be enjoyed. And so that's why I was saying a 3-person sofa is great, where your wife or your girlfriend or your significant other, whoever that is in your life, can sit down with you. And even if they just want to read a book. And the interesting thing is, if this is properly set up, you'll see if it was properly set up, because your significant other is sitting with you. And if they're actually able to physically read the book while they're listening to this, clearly it wasn't properly set up.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
And if it is properly set up, they're going to have trouble turning the page.
Wow.
Because literally their senses are going to be absorbed, and basically they're just going to be carried away on this kind of magic train ride that is our whole enjoyment of music.
Yeah. I have an example of that, if you don't mind.
Please.
The new Tool album that was released 13 years. We all waited. I'm a huge fan, so this was very important to me. So I did a listening party, something I've never tried before. I opened up my recording studio, and I told a few friends, like my 4 or 5 friends, to come over and listen to it, start to finish. Studio speakers, obviously much better than your headphones.
Sure.
And it was great because the setup was, studio desk, 3-person couch, but then there was more of us, chair here.
Lovely.
And you could tell, because I sat over here, I had listened to the album 3-4 times to the speakers that day already. So
yeah.
I sat over here and I watched everyone on the couch. You could tell the focus was totally different. The center person was just so zoned into the music. There was no escaping it.
Correct.
The side 2 were almost like totally then. The one, my buddy on the side here was distracted. He enjoyed it, but you could tell the way he was picking up the music was very different. And
Correct.
It was really incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember it came out that I was driving home the night before, and I almost put it on my car speakers. I was like, no. I waited. I woke up at 5 a.m. I put an alarm, woke up at 5 a.m., and I sat in front of the studio speakers, just right in front of them, and blasted the album. And I listened to it again in the car. And the difference, even alone, it's not like my speakers are perfectly wired in or placed,
Sure.
But the difference from studio speakers to a car was one of those experiences where like, oh my goodness, how dare I listen to my favorite bands not this way,
Correct. No, you're absolutely right. And then obviously we basically amp that up to another level again.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So, and it's not a question of, you need the most powerful amplifier and stuff like that. Really what you need is quality, not quantity. For most people, most people are not going to be playing music at like 105 dB or 115 dB at the listening chair. They're not.
Yeah.
They're going to be listening to it at 65 to maybe 85 at the most.
Yeah.
And that's at the listening chair. But what you want is an engaging experience and something that basically pulls on the heartstrings. And on a sad piece of music, it should start bringing tears to your face. And then obviously on a lovely, joyful piece of music, there's nothing nicer than you're with some woman that you love and she hears this really kind of fun and upbeat piece of music and she grabs your hand and she wants to dance. Right? How can you say no?
How can you say? What I'm most excited for,
Yeah.
personally, is the guitar boom, 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 and something.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be one of those moments that you're talking about where I'm just going to be like, oh, right in here.
Yeah, they crush it. Yeah,
Oh,
they crush it. Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I love the way, I love your approach about this most of all.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. I think it's one of the most important things that's being done in music in the world because of how impactful music itself is. But I love how simple the approach is. Just reach people, allow people to experience this. You're not trying to get something out of them. You're not trying to force them to believe that Abbey Road was the best album ever recorded, because there's so much of that going on, and all you're saying is, here's this beautiful work of art that I love and I appreciate.
Correct.
I want to share it with you in the best possible way.
Correct.
And the lead by example, I mean, this is the perfect example of that.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, we consider this a magnum opus, and we want people to rediscover this absolutely, to me, it's an icon of our culture.
Absolutely.
And, to me, Abbey Road is as significant in my life as, say, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, as Mahler's Fifth Symphony. You start talking about Schubert's, Death of the Maiden. I mean, you start talking about what are the most important pieces of music in our culture. I would say to you, for example, 2 albums from this year that were celebrating their 60th anniversary. 2 albums would be Miles Davis's Kind of Blue and Dave Brubeck's Time Out. And both of those are, again, absolute milestones in our culture. And hey, if anybody from Colombia is listening, let us know if you want to throw a party.
Hey, anybody from anywhere listening that you want to throw a party, let's do it. I mean, go for it. So I guess what I'm most excited about, because I wasn't alive for the 60s, the 70s, all this stuff, and all this great music was being produced, all this great music was being released, and the ability to listen to it was on records and record players. And obviously technology has come a long way with how we can experience music and how we can listen to music. So compared to back then to now, because back then I feel like it was such a different experience. We didn't have this immediate stream button. We had to buy the record. It had to be an experience. We didn't have a choice. It had to be an experience. So we got to listen to music that way. So it's almost like, because we have the technology to take it to that next level, we're forcing it back into having to be an experience. So for you as a music listener, as a fan over the years, what has changed in the actual listening quality for you from when Abbey Road first came out and you first put on that record to now?
Oh, I would say to you, interestingly enough, people think that all these old records may not have been well recorded, and just because they're old, they're not going to sound good. I would say to you, the inverse can also be true. I'll give you an example. So there is an album that was recorded to 10-inch in 1948, released in 1949, Duke Ellington's Liberian Suite. It came out on a 10-inch. And in 1948, Columbia had released this new music format, and it was called the long play record. And the problem at the time was they had the records at the time were made out of shellac, and they were 10 inches in diameter. They had a play time of 3 minutes. They played at 78 revolutions per minute, and they used a very wide stylus. They used actually just a polished steel tip for a stylus. And on this new format that Columbia was also excited about, they used either a diamond or what was the other one? I've forgotten. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They used sapphire. It was either diamond or sapphire styli. And the advantage of this new format, by slowing it down to 33 RPM and then using narrower grooves on the 10-inch record, they were able to bump up the play time to 12 minutes. And then on this wider extended version of 12 inches, that actually gave them 20 minutes of playtime. And it was actually the driving impetus behind this was not actually consumers like you and I. The driving impetus was the movie business. They needed 12 minutes because that's how much time was on a reel of film.
Wow.
So in other words, they were saying we need 12 minutes on a record so that we could sync it to a reel of film and then play it in a cinema.
Who would have thought? Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I really, really like that.
So back in 1948, the Germans had invented the magnetic tape recorder, and they'd used it prior to the Second World War. It was only after the Second World War that Bing Crosby was actually looking for a better medium to record his work. And he was the one who actually funded ATR to develop based on the German technology, but he wanted an American company to do it, so he basically funded ATR to start building tape machines in the US so that they could record. Now, this album that I was referring to, that's the Duke Ellington Liberian Suite, that was recorded direct to vinyl. So they actually didn't have tape machines at the time. So what they did was they just recorded straight to vinyl. And nowadays we describe that as direct to disc. What it means is you can't make a mistake. Right? So in
Yeah.
other words, there is no
Final.
editing. There is no editing. Like whatever they play, that's what you have.
Wow.
And the advantage of the tape machines was that you could go back and edit it, the performance you can edit, and you can add things that's physically just not capable, like sound effects and things like this. You could add all of this after the effect. So that very much ties into Abbey Road. So Abbey Road, by the way, was the first album that the Beatles had a Moog synthesizer.
The Moog. Oh man.
And the interesting
Really?
and the interesting thing is they didn't use much of it.
I was gonna
They were
say.
very Catholic, if you want to use
Yeah.
right. They were very Catholic in their application of the Moog in this.
Wow.
So there's not, lots of kind of catchy kind of tunes that you can immediately hear. It's just, they just brought it in as more a sound effect and brought it in very discreetly.
Wow.
So all of this will be a lot more apparent on this new version of this remixed, remastered 50th anniversary, and executed, by the way, I think with great finesse by Giles Martin, who obviously wanted to respect and uphold his father's legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's done a marvelous job.
I can't wait to hear it. It sounds
Yeah.
like a piece of history. It's like you're reading a history book and the pictures just came to life,
Exactly.
You're actually
Exactly.
there. It's,
Yeah, because he did a lovely job on the previous album he did was Sgt. Pepper. And so he did the same thing on Sgt. Pepper. And it's interesting for music lovers, most of the music lovers would concur and agree that if you wanted the best sounding version of Sgt. Pepper, you actually had to get a first pressing, UK pressing of Sgt. Pepper. That's the one to buy. And let me tell you, I mean, I've got a few copies of this, and I pay for near mint, and I always get VG Plus,
Yeah.
which is kind of unfortunate. But so what Giles Martin did for Sgt. Pepper was he used the mono mix as the guideline. And the mono mix of Sgt. Pepper, that's what George Martin and the Beatles agreed on as to what it should sound like. So
Really?
the guys would have gone out to the pub at lunchtime, and one of the assistant recording engineers, would have assembled the stereo mix. And they never bothered listening to it.
You're kidding.
No, they never bothered listening to it.
Wow.
So
Oh
when
my
Giles
goodness.
Martin went back to remix, remaster Sgt. Pepper, he used the mono mix as the guideline, and then the stereo image. Now we have a much better idea of how this should be. So back in the olden days of stereo, basically you had the different musicians basically stuck to one speaker and then the others stuck to the other speaker. They hadn't figured out how to use phase and how to actually how to assemble this landscape in
Wow.
front of us with the different musicians in a different space. And so, you've got a chance now to hear it using modern technology that wasn't available to them at the time.
It's really incredible where we're coming to regarding the technology, because from what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like this stuff was recorded so eloquently, so properly, so intentional, and then the digital age came and kind of sucked out this authenticity of recording.
Yeah.
And now that it's been around so long, it's almost like we were here with the old music, and then digital came and has finally worked its way back up here, and they're kind of meeting now.
Correct.
We can use this digital technology to bring out what was intended.
Correct.
I mean, what a time to be alive for music, for listeners.
Exactly. And in fairness to Giles Martin, he's been done a very sympathetic job on this, because I bought the White Album and I bought Sgt. Pepper's. His the album he did for Cirque du Soleil, the Love album. I mean, that never existed as a Beatles album, and yet he did a very tasteful job of taking the Beatles' music and turning it into this beautiful composite.
What a responsibility.
Yeah.
What an incredible feat for
Yeah.
for one human.
Yeah.
I mean, I know to a lot of people it could sound just mixing, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's like rewriting history. It's like
Exactly.
being given the keys to the door of history. Here, change it,
Yeah, but you know what? But maybe not change it. I think that's the. I would, respectfully.
Go for it.
Yeah, respectfully, I disagree with how you describe that, because I think what we talked about, it doesn't need to be changed. All we need to do is clear off that patina that came over the years. The patina that's there over the music, and it wasn't because the Beatles didn't, wanted it to sound dark and murky and all this. They didn't. But the technology didn't exist.
This is incredible.
That's the problem, right? So, for example, look, the actual, forget about Her Majesty at the very end of the album, which is just kind of a funny kind of throwaway. The last song on it is The End, which is kind of approximately 2 minutes long. And you've got a lovely guitar solo in there by Ringo, and then you've got the three other lads all get a chance to play 2 bars each, and they all basically get to play their guitars, and they all play, and then they just play them again, and then at the very end, and then of course, by the way, you've got this incredible lyric. What is it? The love that you bring is equal to the love that you take, right? And that's like the major lyric that closes out the album, and then you got this orchestra comes in,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh my God, what a finale!
Yeah.
And it's just the last 2 minutes of the album, and you can hear all 3 guitarists sound very different from each
Oh
other,
man.
right? And what you're going to hear on this 50th anniversary edition, the differences, the nuances between all 3 guitars are going to be even more pronounced. And that's why I'm saying, hey, go to your local hi-fi store, play this, have a beer with them, have a glass of wine, have a cup of coffee, have a bottle of water, and you know what, sit down, relax. And if you're lucky enough to get in, as you said, into the sweet spot, and that's a case really where the dealers need to tell people, look, you can sit in on for 1 song in the sweet spot, but because there's many people, you need to rotate people through that.
Wow.
Yeah?
Oh man, I cannot wait for that end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to get over the idea that they had this finale to this great album, and here we are this many years later about to dive even deeper.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
I'll have to get right in the sweet spot for that
Yeah.
part. Just
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So I don't quite know what audiophiles is. Audiophiles, audio.
Audiophiles?
Audiophiles. I don't know
Audiophiles are basically people who basically follow the sound quality and try to extract the most sound quality, out of a given system, out of a given recording. And interestingly enough, some of the audiophiles, and it's kind of a very kind of male thing, kind of geek out and become completely obsessed with the actual sound quality. Personally, while I would describe myself as an audiophile, personally, I'm actually more a music lover first and foremost.
And there's a very big difference between the two, is what you're saying.
There is a difference between the two. I don't know if it's very big, but there's definitely a difference where, can I distinguish the differences between different components and the setup and all the rest? Of course I can. But for me, it's really a means to an end. So, I've been buying records since I was, 15 years of age, and I spend thousands of dollars every year just on music. And so at this stage, I have about, I don't know exactly, but approximately, say, 1,000 mono records, about 7,000 stereo records. I'd have about 2,500 super audio CDs, and then I'd have, of regular CDs, probably 5, 6, 7,000 of those as well.
Oh my goodness.
And then on tape, I've got, 2-track, 1/4-inch, 15 IPS tapes. And friends of mine will give me a gift of famous albums that they have that they remastered. And then, or else I'll buy them from people like the Tape Project or Acoustic Sounds. And if you like, for example, Muddy Waters, the folk singer, as good as it is on vinyl, when you hear it on tape, you're literally going to go, oh my God, I've died and gone to heaven, right? I mean, you're there, and the dynamics when he's singing into that microphone, and all he's doing is just playing guitar and stomping his leather foot on the ground, and you're like completely immersed.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, what this event is kind of doing is taking the music lovers and the audiophiles and putting them in the same room.
Correct.
And saying, hey, no matter how much you want to say about sound quality or how much you love this song, we're all listening to something that everyone can appreciate.
Correct. And you know what? I asked our dealers to, reach out to their customers. So reach out to the audiophiles and say to the audiophiles, look, here is a special event. Here is something that I thought you would enjoy. Here is an experience that you haven't cottoned onto yet. Come and enjoy it with me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I love this so much, and especially the fact that it's inviting to everyone.
Exactly.
Because you take an audiophile, someone that is obsessed, if you will, with the idea of quality and this sound and that, and you give them everything they could dream of, right?
Exactly.
Give them a situation that they can't criticize in a sense.
Sure.
And immediately turn what's left after that. Well, now you just get to listen. You become just as much a listener as the person that's never touched an instrument or been in a studio in their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I get the chills just thinking about it. This is such a so powerful. I love this. I'm so stoked.
Yeah.
Anybody listening, you better be there.
Exactly.
This is going to change lives. This is going to change the face of everything.
Yeah.
This is absolutely incredible. Yeah. So you run a high-end audio company.
Yes, basically an importer and distributor. So we bring in products from all over the world, and we basically sell them through a dealer network, again from San Diego to Montreal.
So it's a very specific thing to be involved in with the industry, especially at the level that you're at.
Yeah.
And you started out as a music lover. So most music lovers will be like, I'm going to go get a career doing an office job, or I'm going to be a rock star, right?
Sure.
And you went down the path less traveled. Walk me through how you kind of got more involved. Like, I want to be involved in the sound that's being distributed.
Yeah, I mean, I came to the US in '91, and I got a job here initially as a multimedia consultant. And from that, I segued over where I sold some equipment to a film optical house out in Toluca Lake. And they called me back and said, like, oh, Philip, we've got everything up and running, and we've been in business now for a year or something like that, and we're having terrible trouble getting work. And they said, would you come and work for us? And would you sell our services? So they said, first thing you would need to do is you would need to learn about film. And I said, sure. So I went to film school down in Hollywood at night, and then picked up literally. They had no contacts. I mean, I literally was given the yellow pages and told, off you go, get started. And I moved on to another film company after that, and I was basically specialized. I worked as a producer of visual effects. The last show I did was Armageddon.
Oh,
And then prior to that, I did Independence Day. And I've got a couple of dozen credits on IMDb as a visual effects producer.
Wow.
And then at one stage, you know how things kind of happen for a reason. I made friends with an Australian, and he had a very unique amplifier, and he was trying to see if people would buy it. So he moved to the States for like a year, and he brought this amplifier around to people, and he brought it over to our house at one stage, and we became friends. And I thought the amplifier itself was aesthetically very unique looking, and then sonically very interesting because it was squeaky clean, and they advertised this as the amplifier with the lowest distortion ever made. And anyway, cut a long story short, I went up one January to the Consumer Electronics Show in 2001, and I was invited up there first of all just to play music. And you know, my background was I had a nightclub in the south of Spain back in the 80s, mid-80s. I had a nightclub in the south of Spain, and my claim to fame there was I could look at a playlist and tell the DJs what to play, when to play it, and I would be the only person who would know how this music would resonate with the audience. And consequently, at a certain time in the evening, you'd have a couple of hundred young ladies climbing up onto the tables, onto the bar counters, anywhere
goodness.
they could elevate themselves, and they would shake their ass in front of the male patrons. And all the guys the girls loved showing themselves off, and the guys all absolutely loved this.
And
right?
you knew in your head, you're like, that's because I played this song right here.
Well, it would be. And I wouldn't, by the way, see, for example, say there's 7 nights in a week, and people come by in the summer every night. Well, they wouldn't play the same playlist as they played last night. So the same song that got them up on the tables last night, we might play it 10 minutes earlier, but the mood isn't ready for it. So you use a different song then the next night, and then so it might be 5 nights later that actually that same song is used again for that effect.
Wow.
So anyway, going back to the Consumer Electronics Show 2001, using these Halcro amplifiers, I was just explaining to people what they were going to listen to, and what they should listen to, why I was playing this piece of music, and what was so fascinating about it. And consequently, this place was just packed. This was at the Alexis Park in Las Vegas, and the room was like continually packed. And so the owner of this company says to me, Philip, much and all as I like people hearing you show our product, I actually need to drag you over and now tell the press what they're missing. So so anyway, at the end of it all, he said to me, Philip, you really are an absolute natural at this. And he goes, have you ever thought of doing this? Would you ever think of selling these things for me? And I said, I'm up for a career change,
Wow.
So I started on a higher note in 2001.
Wow. What an incredible story. I love that.
Yeah.
And in such a passionate place it comes from too.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's very, for me, presenting music to people is literally as easy as like sticking a hat on my head, because that, sharing that enthusiasm, sharing that passion, absolutely comes from the heart. And it's very, people aren't stupid. I mean, they can hear immediately when somebody is sincere about what they want, and they can definitely tap into somebody's sincerity and enthusiasm when people are portraying, hey, this is music I want to share with you because it's amazing, and I think some of you have not had this experience before. Come and enjoy it with us.
Well,
Yeah.
it's how all things should be. They should
Yeah.
come from that place.
Yes.
Truly come from that place, especially
Yeah.
sharing music. The two greatest gifts I've said this before I could ever receive is recommendation for music, recommendation for literature. Give me a
Agreed.
book, give me a song, make me a playlist. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Agreed.
it. Better than $1 million. That's,
It is.
That's
Yeah.
the
It is.
true expression,
It is.
Because so many of us can't play. I can play guitar, I can do so much, but when people share music that's already made, it means that it's touched their life. The artist has written it because something touched their life, and now it's transferring over to me because my life has reminded this person. I mean, it's just this chain that can't be described. It's so intertwined and so connected just by sharing a song.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, it comes down to, for years, I used to play Rory Gallagher's last album with The Taste, and the album is called On the Boards. And I just, for the audience that I play to, this resonates with them because it comes across as kind of a blues rock album. And Rory Gallagher was written up as this, terrific guitarist. And I used to meet him regularly at a sweet shop out on the Douglas Road in Cork. And so whenever we met, we always had like lots of time for each other, and we chatted, and we always chatted about music. Was basically the lingua franca. He was, quite a few years older than me, but all we chatted about was music and, what we both heard in a piece of music and stuff like that. Well, what was interesting is you talk about being a guitarist. Well, Rory fancied himself as a guitarist, and back in 1967 at the Isle of Wight, they were basically breaking, at the time, Taste as this up-and-coming kind of blues rock band. And he was telling me that they thought that they had their act together, and he was pretty sure that they were going to crush it, and they had practiced, and they had their repertoire figured out. They were really happy about all of this. And he said he was backstage, and he said, "Philo, you won't believe this." And I said, "What happened?" He said, "I'm backstage, I'm listening to some music I've never heard before in my life." And he goes, "Oh my God, what is this?" And he starts listening, and he said, "Philip, you know what it felt like?" He said, "It felt like the guy who had invented the guitar was now just going to play before me."
Oh,
And he said, "I looked out on stage, and there was this young black guy on stage. No idea who he was. But let me tell you, this guy sounded like he had a different songbook to me, and he was the one who, if he hadn't invented it, whoever had invented the guitar had personally taught him something that I had never heard before in my whole life." And he said, "I was absolutely crushed. I heard this guy play," and he goes, "Philo," he said, "absolutely amazing, but just amazing. The completely fresh, innovative perspective that this guy brought to this instrument." And he said, "I'll never, ever forget it." Obviously, he's referring to Jimi Hendrix, right? So
he was backstage,
Yeah.
supposed to follow that up.
Yeah, it's supposed
Jimi
to
Hendrix. I literally, in my bedroom, next to my bed is a giant rug I've nailed to the wall of the picture of Hendrix playing the Isle of Wight.
Yeah. All right. So I played this at the Consumer Electronics Show many years ago. I played a song called "It Happened Before, It Happened Again," and Rory Gallagher plays saxophone on this. And the interesting thing is, I mean, it's no surprise, he plays saxophone, but he plays saxophone like as if he were playing the guitar.
Yeah.
Right?
We can't help it.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, his sax playing is brilliant. So I played this because he obviously plays guitar, and then he puts the guitar down, picks up the sax, and then he plays these very long solos on sax. And I played this, and there was a journalist there from Rolling Stone magazine, and he said, so I told him the anecdote about Hendrix, and he said to me, I've got the perfect repost for that. And I said, share. And he said, shortly before Hendrix died, I sent Hendrix, I had an interview scheduled with Hendrix, so I faxed him over 50 questions that I was going to ask. And so Hendrix got to see everything, and obviously he squished out some questions he didn't want to answer and stuff like that. Fair enough. Anyway, he said, when we got to the question of what's it like to be the greatest guitarist in the world, Hendrix's reply was, I wouldn't know, you'd have to ask Rory Gallagher.
Oh my goodness, you're kidding. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
Yeah.
That's just one of the best stories I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That is a gold mine of stories.
Yeah. So, listen, I mean, look, I mean, we bring people into our world to share, and that's really what it is, to share this time travel experience and to share the emotion in music that they mightn't have gotten before.
Wow.
And, that's why we hope, the more people who can show up at these stores around North America this coming Saturday, hey, I hope you enjoy yourselves. And if you do enjoy yourselves and you want more, please feel free to contact us and tell us what albums we should be considering next.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's More Music, MOR,
Yeah.
music.com.
No, moremusic.today.
.today.
Yeah.
It's Saturday, September 28th, I believe is the
Correct.
date.
Yeah, from 3 to 6 p.m. And it's basically 3 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, 3 to 6 p.m. Central time, and similarly Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
So wherever you are, it's 3 to 6.
Well, everyone go check it out. Make sure you're there.
Yeah.
Before we go, is there anything you want to tell the world, my generation, is there something we need to know that we're missing out on? Because you have this insurmountable, just so much knowledge, so much experience. I wish I could just find a way to make it tangible and hand it out.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, you know what? Keep an open mind. That's all. Keep an open mind. Keep your, make sure your ears are clean, and and basically come and enjoy a new experience.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, lovely.
Well, thank you so much, Philip. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, that was wonderful.